Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Hometown Heroes. I'm Mike Kenichi, and of course, the images you've just seen on the screen are, of course, the one and only Mark Angeletti. He played for Derby from 1986 to 1989, register All-State, All-Hoosie, All-Valley in football, and of course, in wrestling, he just stole the show, and we'll get into a lot of that. But it's my pleasure to introduce to you the one and only Hall of Famer, Mark Angeletti. And Mark, I want to thank you for coming on today. It's a real honor.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really looking forward to it.
Right. So, Mark, first thing I want to ask you is obviously you grew up in Derby. We all know that. But how did the first inkling for Derby football begin for you?
Well, used to go to the games. That's the first thing. Used to walk to the games. Definitely used to stop by Yolanda's and get a loaf of, a 10-cent piece of bread, and then head to the games really early in the morning. Get there about, but they were 10:30 a.m. games back then on Saturday. So the bread used to be made, so you'd be able to get that, and then get to the game about 8 o'clock in the morning, so you could watch everybody shining their shoes, kind of getting ready for that, and kind of watch the other team show up, watch them get warmed up. You always wanted to, watch the whole thing unfold, especially the cut grass. You get that smell in the morning. But that was the first inkling of all that, and that's how it all started. And then just going to those Saturday morning games and having that routine in place, and watch Derby win all the time too, especially all the great players back then. Really was the highlight of the whole thing, and being able to get close to them and be able to see them, play. And not only just the Derby players, but it was the other team players too you knew about, because you knew who was coming in and who these other players were. And it was always good to see those matchups. And, growing up, you always wanted to be one of those really good players. So, and it just kind of just steamrolled from there.
Right. And Mark, there's always a team when you're a young kid that you kind of remember fondly. And for me, I really remember the 87 team that we'll get into a little bit that went 9-1, won the Hoosie, knocked off Shelton on Thanksgiving. But was there a team when you were a young kid, say fifth or sixth grade, that you really enjoyed watching that made you really love Derby football?
Sure. I would say it'd be the 84 team was really a highlight for me. They kind of had a rough year, but they played Ansonia, and I was at that game, and Ansonia jumped out, I believe, to an early lead. I believe that was the year, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was that, or maybe that was 83 game, 83 year, I believe.
Right.
And they were number one in the state that year. Ansonia jumped out to an early lead, and Derby came back, and I believe tied it. And then Ansonia came back and did a huge play downfield, threw a bomb, and they won 19-13. But that team really did a nice job of staying true to the Derby form, never giving up, never quitting, no matter against the odds. Uh, you know, and I knew a lot of those, I was 13 at the time, so I knew a lot of the players from the neighborhood that were on the team, were growing up. But that team was special because I was just turned a teenager. You're really impressionable with a lot of those players. And I knew a lot of them just from being, like I said, in the neighborhood and being around those guys and growing up with them. So you get a little older, get a little wiser 1 year later, and so on and so forth. That team, the 83 team there.
Right. So, and, that 83 team.
That was a really memorable game for me. Even though we got beat in the game, that was a really memorable game. What a game.
Yeah, and it really was a great game. I know a good friend of mine, a good friend of yours, Ronnie Leno, he played in that game. He was a senior that year. Yeah. And, it's kids like Ronnie. It was people like Jeff Rice that I always say there's always Derby athletes that you kind of watch play, and they really like, you see the passion they have, and it makes you want to go out there and play. So I would think like at a young age, it was just watching different players as well, especially, you know, watching them on defense, making great tackles and stuff like that, that really just made you love going to the games as
Yeah.
well.
And I think the play Derby was hitting on that day was the handback trap. I think it was like a 24 handback trap. Really was working well that day against Ansonia, I believe. I think that's how they got back into the game. So it was really, some of the plays you remember hearing about, the guys talking about that and, the plays. And even as a kid, you knew, hey, that's the handback trap, growing up. So just, you learn about all those things. And, as you're, because like I said, you get close to those guys, and you hear stories about it and you want to be a part of it, no doubt about it. So you're ingrained with it. So,
And let me ask you, Mark, were you able to play Pop Warner? Did you play any Pop Warner as a
yeah,
kid?
yeah, I actually did play Pop Warner. And, that's actually where I got my nickname. Was the first year I was 11 years old playing junior midgets, and I tried to get into the year before. It just didn't work out for me. But I actually walked myself to City Hall where they had registration at the Derby Veterans Community Center, and I signed up myself. Walked there myself, signed up myself. I said, I don't know any of the plays. They said, don't worry about that. We'll take care of it. And I was on a really good team. We won the Southern Connecticut Pop Warner Championship that year. I was on a really good team, which turned out to be the '87 team that we were on. Most of those guys were on that junior midget team, including Ray McGee, Jay Bonanto, uh, a few other guys too. Not to mention them, but they were all on that team. So Nick Rizzio,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, all those guys were on that team. So kind of played. That was my first introduction with those guys. So I kind of grew up playing with them. Even I was on the midget team with them the year later. So they were they were a year ahead of me, but I was a little heavier back then. So
And Mark, there's always coaches that are going to impact you, and you learn so much from coaches over the years. But for you, your first year playing, who were some of the coaches that were on that staff that year?
sure, it was actually Mr. Ascenzo's brother, Carmen Descenzo. Uh, let me see, Mr. Rizzio was there. He's actually the one that gave me my nickname, Mr. Rizzio, from running up those hills. So he gave me the nickname Mule. So I got that when I was 11 years old. Uh, let me see who else I'm thinking.
Was Barry McDermott there? Or?
Barry showed up periodically, but
Right.
I knew Barry. Well, Mr. Coach, I knew Barry after that. After that season, I got to know Barry a little bit better after that because Mr. Riz used to actually take me to some other football games with Barry. So, and I learned he taught me a lot of good stuff, Barry. So he helped me out quite a bit. So he became a coach to me in another fashion when I used to go to games with Mr. Riz. Because he would go to Barry, and then with your dad too, actually, Mr. Kenichi. He would
Yeah.
come too quite a bit. So I met your dad at a young age. So I was 11 years old when I met your dad. So
Wow.
that's a long time ago. And so I called Mr. Kenichi. So he used to like to eat hot dogs too with me. So so we had a good time there. Uh, thinking of the other coaches, I can't think of them off. I know them by face, but I lost some of their names over time. But I know that Carmen was there, Carmen Descenzo, Mr. Riz. I can't remember some of the other guys, but
Right.
I
And that's going to happen.
I know their face.
Right. So, Mark, let me ask you, like anything else, when kids play Pop Warner, they go through different positions. They don't always play the same position right away that they'll play in high school. I know you were a guard and linebacker in high school, but your first couple of years, did you pretty much play on the line, and did you play linebacker?
No, I was an offensive and defensive tackle. No, yeah,
Oh,
in
okay.
my first couple of years, my junior midget year, my midget year, I was an offense and defensive tackle, and then in my eighth grade year, I was too heavy to play Pop Warner. I was an older, lighter, so older, heavier. You kind of say that. So I played uh, freshman football as an eighth grader. So, but I could only practice. I could not play in the games. So I'd go to practice every day, practice with those guys because I played Pop Warner with them all too. So they were good friends to me. So I was able to practice and get a year of experience working with those guys. And there I became a linebacker and guard because there's the
Yeah.
bigger guys there now. So they had enough offense and defensive tackles, and they were bigger guys too than me. So I became a linebacker and guard that year. And so I was able to practice and get some experience there. And then my freshman year, I became a tackle and linebacker my
Right.
freshman year. And then my sophomore year, I was a guard and linebacker from there on out.
Right. And Mark, I think it shows the dedication and commitment that you had at a young age, because it's not easy for any kid to go to practice day in and day out every week and know that they're not going to play it down the entire year. But it shows that you wanted to gain some experience. So even though you couldn't play in the games in eighth grade, being at those practices, you knew that would be beneficial to you. So it really says a lot about your work ethic as well.
Well, I got to thank, I got to thank Mr. Rizzio and Barry for that, because at a young age, they were like, why are you going to try to lose weight to play Pop Warner when you got better players at the freshman level? Even though you can't play, you're going to get more experience doing that, and you're going to be heavier. You're going to do that. You don't want to lose that year of experience being with the older guys. So they kind of gave me some really good advice, him and Mr. Riz, about doing that. So, when you got really good people around you, such as Mr. Riz, Barry, and, giving you some good advice, I mean, you got to take it, And so I was able to they were able to help me give me a good decision about, do I go down and try to lose weight and play Pop Warner, or do I stay up heavier and practice and be around much bigger guys where I'm going to have to be a year later anyways. So, they steered me in the right direction, at least, in being able to put me in a better spot for the future, and
Right.
it really helped a lot. So,
Now,
so I was able to lean on them a little bit and I trusted them because I'd been with them since I was 11. So a couple years later, you know, I was able to communicate that with them. So it was good for me.
right. Now, switching gears a little bit, Mark, obviously, as great a football player as you were, and you were a great football player, you were equally great at wrestling. How did wrestling start for you? Because, I mean, we're going to get into that. And what you did on that mat was just unbelievable. But how did it all begin for you?
Well, my older brother Tony wrestled 1 year back in '83, and they won the state title actually with Buster. But he graduated. He wrestled 1 year only. He wrestled JV for a year. He wrestled like 5 varsity matches. Did really well, like 5-0. And he kind of got me into it. He said you should probably think about wrestling. I went to a couple of practices, got tossed around a little bit, but I really liked it. And we had a middle school wrestling program at the time. The Derby Upper School was there. So that upper school program, but I was the only one in eighth grade that was part of the upper school program. So I used to practice with the JV guys, JV wrestlers. So I was here. Here you go again. I'm a younger kid wrestling with freshmen and sophomores. So when you always are a younger guy and you wrestle or you compete against older kids, it's a matter of survival. you know,
Yeah.
you got to go in with the mindset that, you're younger. These are older kids. This is not, they're going to treat you accordingly. And if you don't go in with the right mindset, they're going to throw you around. So you got to be ready every day. and you have to go in being competitive. So it makes you a much more competitive person going into those situations. And you have to know what you're up against. But it also makes you a better performer too. So which helped me in the long run. Is then I was able to be competitive as a freshman. So I'm in eighth grade wrestling freshmen and sophomores, maybe occasional junior. But now when I'm a freshman, I can compete against them now. I'm ready as a freshman coming in. So when I was a freshman, I wrestled at 189, but I was 170 pounds. I couldn't wrestle 169 because we had Mark Marciano, who was a state champion, so I couldn't compete against him. He was unbelievable, you know. So I wrestled up a weight class and I placed sixth at the state tournament, which as a freshman is really good, but wrestling older kids and heavier kids. But I was used to that. I already defeated that in my mind that I could compete against them because I did it when I was in eighth grade. So,
Right.
it's just a matter of mindset, going into it.
Right. And how did you evaluate yourself that eighth grade year? Now, obviously, you're a kid back then, but did you feel like you had a good season for a first year wrestler? And did you know, like going forward, you would continue to do it?
Well, in the beginning of the year, I was a little hesitant because I didn't have that confidence that I needed to have going in. But as the season goes on, you start to gain a little bit of confidence in yourself and you move on and you're like, okay, I could do this. You know what I mean? I work just as hard as everybody else. I deserve, you know, this just as much as they do. So I started to be more competitive at the end of the season, which really helped me. So I was upset that I didn't get it earlier, to tell you the truth. As a young kid, I'm like, why wasn't I doing this at the beginning of the year? It's my own fault. So I don't want that to ever happen again. So now, from now on, you go in with high expectations every year. I'm winning the state title. So now going into my sophomore year, I'm thinking I'm winning the state title. I'm going to go win the state title. That's my goal. I'm not going in thinking small things. I'm thinking big things right now. And you go in with that mindset, you got to work hard every day. And everybody works hard, but you got to find ways to separate yourself from the competition.
Yeah.
What are you going to do differently? We all work hard. What are you going to do differently than what he's doing? What are you going to do extra? What are you going to do to make a difference? So that's what you're always trying to look for, those differences. And that's what I always try to find. What am I going to do differently than my opponent is doing? What am I going to give me that psychological edge that my opponent doesn't have, that I have? So,
Right.
and those are important things that give you that mental edge, that knowing that you can go that extra distance or that extra minute or overtime to win the match. So it's important part of the process for the development. How I had to go through it. Everybody has their own kind of journey, I guess you could say. But that's how I went through it. It's just more of a mental game than anything. But when you want it bad enough, you got to think of ways. You got to figure a way out of it. You got to figure a way to get through those moments, those rough moments.
Right. So let's talk about freshman year, Mark. And freshman year, playing football. I know the freshman team didn't have a great year that year. I think they won one game, but you go into that freshman year, and I believe you had John Oko and Tom D'Onofrio as the freshman coaches, correct?
Yeah. Yes, we did. Yes.
Yeah. And, it's high school now, and it was a big year for Derby football because they finally knocked off Ansonia that year at the varsity. They had gone on an 11-game losing streak. They upset them at Nolan Field that day, and then they ended up winning the state title. So although like the freshman season didn't go as well as you would have liked, you came at your entrance in the Derby High as a freshman was a big year for Derby football.
Big year. Yeah, big year for Derby football. I'll tell you the thing, our freshman team really struggled because we had some really inexperienced guys, but we had some decent players, but we just weren't experienced enough to be together and to be able to play those games. Now, the later they became better players, because we had some really good coaches and a really good team system of how we did that. But we struggled really, really bad, especially early on. We got a little better as the season went on, but we took some really good beatings there from some of the Valley teams. Really beat us down really bad, and we took it personal. Uh, you know, and we turned some things around. You know, our senior year, which we were real proud of, but we took some serious beatings. You know, especially from Ansonia. You know, so but some of those things though really motivated us to you know you know to turn things around and to play together as a team and to become really good friends and to understand that we got to do this together. And I think we came across like that, and we became real tight, and we really played well together. By our senior year, we really played well together and played for each other. So I'm real proud of that moment. Our class really are really proud of ourselves for what we were able to accomplish from our freshman year to our senior year. I think we accomplished a lot in that class.
Right. And Mark, right away, you make an impact your freshman year as a wrestler. And just let me ask you, you go into that season and Buster Jaddock's the head coach, and we all know what a fixture he's been in Derby. He was an excellent football player that not many people realize because he gets more recognition for wrestling, but he was an outstanding football player. But going into your freshman year, and one thing about wrestling practices, Mark, you get in there, and I mean, by the time you go home, you're beat because they are working you guys hard, but they're doing it because it's going to make you better wrestlers. So talk about freshman year a little bit during wrestling
Sure,
season.
sure. Well, you know, I was real lucky that I had three really good captains my freshman year. I had Mark Borchano, who was a state champion that year. I had Ronnie Sheehy, who was a state champion that year. And I had John Bogart, who was a state champion that year. Guess who my three practice partners were that year? Those three guys. So I'm a
Yeah.
170-pound freshman. I have to wrestle three state champions every single day my freshman year. If you thought they were light on me, you're absolutely wrong. If I let up for one moment and I wasn't trying to push them to be the best, because they wouldn't wrestle you if they didn't think you were going to push them. Because you can't become a state champion if you don't work hard and you're not being pushed every day. So you can't do it. It's impossible. So they need a partner that's going to work with them and push them hard. So I was able to work with them every single day. That's what made me better, you know. And if I let up for one moment, man, they would be on me like you wouldn't believe. It would be a work. Practices were the hardest part of the whole thing. The matches were easy compared to practice. Were easy. I couldn't wait for the matches. I'd be running out onto the mat. I'm serious. You go watch. You go watch the film. You can watch the film of those matches. When Mark Berchino was still walking off, I was running on because I couldn't wait to get on the mat from after those practices. Those guys were, I owe them a debt of gratitude. They did a really good job with me, and they really taught me a lot of really good stuff early on, you know, and I was able to carry all that and make it better, you know, by the time I was a senior. But they really did a good job with me, really teaching me, you know, some really good moves, and they really taught me the fireman's carry, one of my best moves I had. They really showed me how to do it and taught me how to practice it and make it better. So, you know, those guys did a great job. You know, they were great leaders too, and they were all state champions. But you know, you know, who else can you learn better from than someone who's already done it? You know.
Yeah. And I think about this, Mark, that when you have people like that that are leading you and they're helping you, it makes you a better wrestler because you see the sacrifice that they put in. And you also, uh, they become like people you look up to. So when they're helping you and they're working you hard, it's only going to make you a better wrestler. And a big reason, you know, a big part of your success as a wrestler, you have to attribute that to your coaching staff and to those guys that helped you along the way.
Yeah. There was also a couple other guys too. There was we had Lee Interanti also
Yeah.
wrestled there too. Lee was the assistant coach with Buster there too. And when those guys eventually graduated that year, my sophomore year, Lee kind of took over the training for me. And Lee did a wonderful job. Lee was an excellent coach. He's up at Torrington High School now. He's been up at Torrington for over 40 years. But he's an awesome, awesome coach, real patient with me. And he did a really good job with me, helping me move on and make me better. So, and then also Joe DiMartino was there coaching a long time. The late Jeff Collins was there a bunch of times, wrestled him quite a bunch. They all did a really good job with me. So I owe them all a debt of gratitude just for being there and helping me get better, helping us all get better, really, not just me, but they were all coaching at the time with Buster. So, and I really appreciate everything they've done for me. So,
right. So,
yeah.
Mark, let's talk about a sophomore year at Derby football, and that was another big year for Derby. And Charlie DeCenzo had just won a state title. He beat Ansonia, which hadn't been done in a long time. But the one thing he still needed to have was a Housatonic championship. Your sophomore year, he gets that first Hoosie championship. Now, that team, Mark, not a lot of people predicted great things for that team, but they were a team. They played hard together. They knew how to gut out wins. And I think they finished 10-2, had a tremendous year. Talk about your sophomore year of football at Derby.
Sure. Well, we were a really good team. Offensively, we were excellent. Jimmy Lewis was an unbelievable running back. Bobby Sobin was an excellent fullback. We had Chris King at quarterback, and then what an athlete he is. And then so we were really stacked. Our offensive line was really good, was young, and some veteran guys up front too. But I'll tell you, really good offensive team, put points on the board, and could run the ball efficiently all day long. They could run the ball all day long. That team, and could pass the ball because you had Pete Sackhew as a receiver, which is real nice to have. We could deep threat right there. And so, excellent offensive team. Now, Derby's always known for defense. So the defense is going to be always stout. So that's a given. So when you have when we have an offense that can move the ball, it's going to be a real good recipe for a great team. Because our defense is always going to be tough, no matter what.
Right.
So, and I think that's what made the team go is the offense was so efficient in running the football. And not only just, 5-6 yards a clip. I mean, if you watch the film on that, and then Jimmy Lewis could really run the football, you know what I mean? And Bobby was an awesome fullback who could also run the ball. He was elusive. He wasn't just a big burly fullback. He could run, and score. He actually scored twice against Ansonia that year. I believe he did. So,
yes,
2 runs. So, I mean, it's a really good team. So, and it was where I fit in was I was just a JV player at that time. I was a backup guard, a backup linebacker, and that's where my role was. And that's where I stayed, and I was fine with that. We had 2 other senior linebackers, 2 other senior guards. That was fine with me. They were showing me how to play the game. That's it. I thought that's where I was where I was at that particular time. And I had a really fun year. It was a great year for me for learning how to play the position, how to read, especially as a linebacker, how to read the backfield. You have to learn that system, how to read a guard, how to read a fullback, how to read a tailback, especially how to read pulling guards. Which way is he pulling, left, right? Is he pulling outside? Is he pulling inside? Center stuff, center back blocks. So you got to learn all that stuff. It's not so easy as a freshman But when you make that transition into the varsity world, the blocking schemes change. The fullback going left, right. How wide is he going? Is it a toss play or is it an inside tackle play? Is he diving down the middle? Those are all big things to know, and you got to be able to step properly in order to play that properly. You can't step straight ahead if he's going outside wide. So you got to match step for step, and they don't tell you that stuff. You got to learn that stuff, and those are the differences between, say, your freshman year and your sophomore year. But it takes you a little time to learn that, And some of the best advice that I've ever received was from Coach DeCenzo my sophomore year. He's like, if the fullback goes this way, you got to go this way. The fullback goes this way, you got to go this way. And it kind of surprised me, because it was early on in my sophomore year where he said that to me. But he didn't say match the step. He said if he goes this way. But he was talking in general. If he goes this way, far outside right, compared to, say, just going to the A gap right, there's a difference between him doing that. So, you have to take it, in stride, I guess, because, you have to match that step of that particular player. I guess you
Right.
get to get my meaning, So,
Right. So, Mark, wrestling season that year was a big year for you. Talk about that a little bit, because now you're a sophomore, Mark, and I don't think you are the type of guy to put pressure on yourself. You're just going to challenge yourself. But did you feel any pressure because now you're no longer the rookie anymore and you're in your second year? And one thing about wrestling, Mark, as you know, you're not guaranteed a spot. If somebody wants to go on the mat with you to try to wrestle varsity for the next meet, they're allowed to do that. So you always have to be on your game. I mean, there's no guarantee that you're going to stay on the mat week in and week out.
no, not at all. Wrestling wrestling is very fair. You wrestle off. And if you win your wrestle off, you get the varsity spot. So, and you can wrestle off every week if you want. Challenge it. I want to challenge for the spot. I want to challenge for the spot. It's very fair, and that's why I really enjoy wrestling and really love the sport, because you may not win this week, but maybe you'll win next week, and you don't have to settle for that situation. You could go up a weight class, you could go down a weight class, you could stay at your weight class if you want, and you could challenge and try to become a better wrestler and try to earn your state championship is what you're trying to get. People really like that option in wrestling, to wrestle off. And the fairest thing in the world, the fairest thing in the world. So, yeah. So I'm fortunate enough where I was in a situation where I never had to wrestle off. Maybe people felt they were not going to beat me. Maybe, I don't know, but I didn't have to wrestle off. I was very fortunate. Maybe now I could have wrestled off my freshman year against Mark Marciano, but out of respect for him, I'm not going to wrestle him off. He's going to beat me down. And then he was a he was undefeated state champion. And then he, that was his weight class, and I'd rather wrestle up a weight class to wrestle varsity than wrestle him off every week. It's just a respect thing, so.
Yeah. And let me ask you, Mark, I mean, you were getting better and better each meet, never mind each year. And one of the things that I know that anybody that gets on that mat has the dream of being a state champion. And you were able to do it a couple times, but talk to us a little bit about what that first time winning the state championship meant to you, because that had to just, you always set goals for yourself, and that had to be a tremendous feeling for you, especially when you didn't really start wrestling until 8th grade. So in a matter of a few years, you were a state champion.
Yeah. I tell you, my sophomore year, I thought I had a really good shot. There were two other guys that were seated ahead of me, and I beat one of them in the semifinal. So I put him on his back. I fireman carried him right to his back, and he got disqualified because he bit me in the face.
No.
Dead serious, no lie. He bit me in the face and was pulling my hair. He was undefeated, 25-0, returning fourth place finisher at 169. He went up a weight class. He was biting me in the face and pulling my hair when I had hair. And I had him right on his back, pinning him. I wish they slapped the mat and pinned him. But the ref disqualified him for biting me in the face. So I was in the finals against another, uh, uh, the defending runner-up, who I beat the year before as a freshman. I had a lot of respect for this guy. He was a really good wrestler, really good person too. And he wound up beating me in the finals. So I had a taste of being in the finals, and I thought I had a really good shot to win it my sophomore year, but I took runner-up. And then my junior year, I just was so focused on, I tell you, that week going into the state tournament, I would not leave practice till I thought I was ready. I would not leave practice that day, any day, until I'm okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to leave practice. You were not rolling up the mats. I'm not ready. I'm staying until I'm ready. And that's how I went about practice. So if it was 3 hours, then I'm staying 3 hours. So every day, that's how I went the whole week. The Thursday before we went into Friday, I would not leave practice till I was ready to leave for the state tournament on Friday. And that's just how it went for me. I've worked on every move I could possibly think of 3 times, made sure I was secure in every move, every position. That's how meticulous I was my junior year going into the state tournament. I didn't mind what everybody else was doing. I just needed to be ready for myself, on what I was doing, and made sure that I was confident in everything that I was doing, covered all my bases, and thankfully Buster let me do that. Because I guess he knew how I was thinking. And I did talk to him about how I was thinking about that week, how I wanted to be ready for the tournament, the Class S tournament. So, I guess he just let me do my thing. And he coached me up, don't get me wrong. I was able to, bounce ideas off of him. But it was an important week for a lot of people, So we had 3 people in the state tournament finals that day. Mark Del Maro, Jeff Fernandez, and myself. And Jeff Fernandez won the state title that week. So, and I won it too. And Mark Del Maro took runner-up. You could see how everybody was really focused throughout that whole week. So, getting themselves ready, and I wasn't the only one. So, and you got to be ready to go that week. If you're not focused and you're not confident in yourself, it's gonna be a long week. It's gonna be a long day for you. So, that's how I went about my business. Is having myself mentally ready, physically ready, and ready to go 1,000 miles an hour. In any situation. So it was a fun time for me. I like that stuff. I like being detail oriented. I like to sweat and let's go. I love practicing. Practice is fun for me. Practices are good. So,
and Mark, junior year was just a big year in general for you because on the football field, you had started both ways, guard and linebacker. And what a first game you had against Seymour, Mark, that year, because they were a very good team. It was a very tricky game for Derby. I think it was a Friday night game under the lights, heavy rain. And you had a tremendous game, and I believe you were the Fitzpatrick player of the game that night. So talk about that Seymour game a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So right after that picture was taken. Yeah. So what happened was, it rained really bad. And from what I remember, we didn't want to play that game. Mr. Senzel didn't want to play the game because it was raining so bad. The field was terrible, but I guess Seymour wanted to play. So we decided to play the game, and the field got trashed after that game. But the field was one of the best in the state. So it held pretty good, but it was really muddy and really bad field. So we, going into the game, it was really a tough game to decide because there was no measuring stick against anything that we've had. But what we did have is we went to a 6-1 defense. That was the first time we went to a 6-1 defense that anybody saw. So we used to play, we did our 4-4 defense only at home scrimmages. But at away scrimmages, we ran our 6-1 defense. So when we came out on the first snap of the play, we were in a defense that Seymour never seen before. Picture that. Seymour center looked up at me, and he had the eyes as big as saucers. He had no idea what we were in or anything. It was the first time we ran a 6-1 defense. So that's Mr. DeCenzo coaching right there.
Yeah.
So, but when you had home scrimmages, the other teams would come and watch you. That's the only way they could scout you. So we used to go to other teams' home scrimmages. But the away scrimmages, you didn't because you had your own scrimmages to deal with.
Right.
So at away scrimmages, we would only run our 6-1 defense to practice it. So when we came out, man, they had no idea we were in a different defense. So they had to contend with that, which was a big surprise. And on the first play of the game, what happens? Interception, Todd Hunter. Next play, touchdown, we score. So what an emotional, 3 plays that was. They didn't hunt or 2 plays. So we were able to jump out on them early at our place, which was good. And we were able to grind out a win against a really good team. Seymour was an excellent team. My junior and senior year, they were a really talented team. I believe they were picked to win the league title, if I'm incorrect. I mean, they were really talented. Joe Stockmall is a really talented player. So we were able to grind out a win against a really good team. With good defense. And what can we say, man? It was awesome. It was an experience. But one other thing that was kind of funny that happened to me that game, wasn't able to shake hands with Seymour players at the end of the game. So right after that picture was taken of that right there, our Mr. DeCenzo's brother, Carmen DeCenzo, comes up to me and takes me away and brings me upstairs to the field house. So I wasn't able to shake hands. He takes me away. It's a funny story. Takes me away and brings me up to the field house. I didn't shake hands or anything. Right after I raised my hand, he comes right up to me, takes me away, brings me up to the field house. He goes, I go, what's going on? I go, what's up? He goes, yeah. He goes, there was rumors that the fans were going to jump you at the end of the game. They were going to jump you and beat you up. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. I'm like, that's unbelievable. I guess for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, but that's a true story. I'm like, why would they do this? I guess they weren't expecting. I don't know what that's about, but that's a true story.
Right. And Mark, that whole season, that team knew how to find ways to win. I mean, they didn't always go out there and, bury everybody, but they found ways to win. The North Haven game, that was kind of scary, but a fumble like at the 6-yard line and you guys recover, you win 6-0. Then, of course, there were games against Lyman Hall. I think it was 7-0. Even East Haven, it was 21-14. So, it didn't matter how you guys won. You found ways to win. And then, God, you topped it all off that Thanksgiving game. And to this day, Mark, if John Oko is sore, or Tommy Oko, if he's sore somewhere, it's got to be because some of the hits you put on him in that Thanksgiving game. Because, I mean, that was a clinic that day. Not just Pettinella with the great game, but the way you guys that was the whole point. The whole key to that game is that defense just was relentless on Shelton's very good offense. So, I mean, it had to be a thrill for you guys to finish 9-1. You beat Shelton, which Coach DeCenzo had yet to do in his career, and you win a Hoosie to top it all off. Had to be something special for you and your teammates.
Yeah, it was a great day. It was special. You knew it was coming too because you knew we were ready to play. The guys were really focused all week long about practice, and we were really real fired up for that game. We knew how important it was to Mr. DeCenzo to win that game. and you knew it was going to be a battle. We didn't realize we were going to take that big of a lead, or Greg Pettinella was going to have the game he did, but we were happy he did. Definitely. He did a great job, and what a game he had. And Tony Pick threw some really good balls too. He was right on the money. So, it was a good team effort with Greg Pettinella just playing spectacular, and the defense played lights out. We did really well up front, and then, getting a really good push, with the pass rush and putting pressure on them with the pass rush, and then also stopping the run. That was special. That was a special day for us, and I'm real happy for that class too. I was real close with that class because I played a lot of Pop Warner with them. I played freshman football when I was in 8th grade with them, and then I played with them. There's only 1 year I didn't play with them, actually 2 years, which was my original freshman year and my senior year. So all the other ones I usually play with that class. So I knew them really well, and I'm real happy that we were able to cap it off with a nice win over Shelton. I wish we went to the state title. That would have been a special day to play Ansonia again, but never happened. So that's unfortunate.
Right.
But nothing you can do about that.
And Mark, I think one of the best honors any Derby football player could receive, because you know how important it is to put on that uniform, to wear that helmet, and how special it is with the tradition. And I'm sure for you, when you were selected captain your senior year, that had to be one of the big highlights of your Derby high school career.
Yeah, it was. I was very. Yeah, it was. It's a special day when you're selected captain, and the players select you. It's a big responsibility, and leadership is not easy to do. Leadership is not easy. Being a leader, it's really a lot of work. It's a lot of. It could be stressful at times too to get everybody on board. But I'll tell you one thing: all we had to say to each other was, "Do you want to beat Ansonia or do you not want to beat Ansonia?" Because they put a beating on us our freshman year, and that if you have any pride in yourself, you have to ask yourself, do you want to beat Ansonia or do you not want to beat Ansonia? So, and that was the easy question to answer. So we were all self-motivated towards that goal. So the class that I had, at least being a captain, was a little easier that year because we were all motivated toward one goal, and that was to not only win games, but to beat Ansonia. So,
and what a Sunday afternoon, Mark, beating them that day, because you guys were an underdog. I know Ansonia had a loss going into that game, but they were favored. And again, you talk about that 68-8 loss your freshman year, which you guys never forgot. I know Chris Anderson, he had that in his head his entire 4 years. And what I always remember about that game is, if that game was proof that it doesn't take one person to win a game, it takes a whole team. And you saw different things throughout that game. Steve Bizzato with the field goal, Ray Silvernail, people forget sometimes, but his punt that Fran Hendricks couldn't handle, that was a big turning point because that set up the winning field goal. So everybody on that team that day stepped up. When Todd Hunter went out, Jason Palmieri came in and did a good job on defense.
That's right.
Everybody stepped up that day to get that victory.
They definitely did. And the line blocked tremendously. Dave Moscato, Dino, Mike Mangillo, and then Jay Benanto, and then Chris Benanto, and then just awesome job. You can't, it's inexplicable, the things that happened that game. It just happened. And it's amazing how it all came together like that. Whoever thought someone like Fran Hendricks would drop a punt? Franny Hendricks was an unbelievable football player, and for him to do that, that's never happened, man. I've been to a lot of games with him playing, and I never seen it happen to him. It's just freak things happened, you know what I mean? And then at the end of the game, the last play of the game, where Harold Bell got his knee gave out on that play. If you remember watching that game, I'm like, that's amazing how all this unfolded at the end of the game. It's just It's like it was amazing. And I'll tell you, the players, our players on Derby, were just played amazingly. I mean, Chris Doria played really well as a junior. He managed the game. He managed the game very well that day. And I'll tell you, for him, that's probably, you know, his best game that he played, if you probably asked him, because he was focused, he was had energy, and he wanted to win that game more than anything. You know, that's the important thing about leadership is that when the juniors and the sophomores, when they when they when you treat them well and they respect you, they'll play their asses off for you. They'll play for you. You know what I mean? That's important. That's important. If you treat them poorly and they don't like you, they won't play for you. But those guys play for us. That junior class, that sophomore class, when Jason Palmieri came in and played, he was a sophomore then. He played for us. You know what I mean? He played to win the game for us. Because he loved us and he cared for us. And the same thing with the juniors. You know, those guys played and cared for us enough to win the game for us to help us achieve that goal of beating Ansonia. So, you know, I owe them all a debt of gratitude and just to thank you for doing that and for putting that effort in and for everybody, you know, for all those guys, you know, those underclassmen that admitted to that, you know, thank you. You know, it was a good job. They did a hell of a job. You know, maybe it was our leadership that helped us with that. Maybe it was our passion for wanting to get the job done. You know, it was probably a bunch of things. That's the thing about leadership. You know, it pays off. You know, in the long run, it's not easy, but when you do it right, it pays off in the long run. You know.
Yeah. And Mark, you know, you go into that winter season of wrestling, and what a wrestling senior year you had. Number one, Mark, you made history that year. I believe you were 38-1 for the season. You got 101 wins, which was a record. And then to top it all off, if my memory serves me right, you were the first Derby wrestler ever to win the state open. So a lot of history that year. Just talk about that wrestling season, Mark, because like anything else, a senior, they could, you know, if they have a great sophomore, junior year, that's great for them. But they always want to end their senior year the way they hope they can. And you ended your wrestling career with just so many great moments. Talk about senior season and winning that state open.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it started off really good, but the problem I ran into was so we only had 24 dual meets during the regular season. We had a couple of preseason tournaments, which I was able to win, but we ran into a little bit of a snag as the dual meets were coming along. So you had 24 dual meets. Of the 24 dual meets, I had 13 forfeits. So no one was wrestling me. So I would get forfeits, but when you get forfeits, those are fine, but you don't get to work. You don't get to work on your technique. You don't see where your mistakes are happening. You know, what do I need to correct? What do I need to get this wrong? You know, what am I doing wrong here? What am I doing right? So it became a little bit of an issue, you know, a little bit of a stressor for me. So I was a little stressed there because I wasn't getting the work I wanted. So that was a problem. And I was getting the work in practice, which was fine. But I was under a little pressure from there. And then the competition wasn't stiff. So when I went to the open, it was going to be an issue because I'm like, who am I wrestling? I'm not wrestling anybody. And then when I go against a really good competition, it's going to be a problem, you know? I was afraid of that. So I'm not afraid, but I was leery of that. So when I got to the open, I was there and I was like, you know, your competitive nature takes over. So I was a little hesitant going in, but once I stepped on the mat and I looked at my opponent, I'm like, I'm gonna kick your ass, and I just went out there and just did it, you know. And that's the thing, you know, you get competitive and you're like, is it time to do it? You know what I mean? Is it time? Time is now. and you can't wait any longer, you know, and you get that sense of urgency, and you get competitive, and you're like, you either have confidence or you do not have confidence. And I had a really good day. I had a real confidence day. I was ready to go, and I just went right at it, and I just started fireman carrying everybody. If he tied up with me, I'm hitting a fireman's carry, which was my signature move at the time. So what that does is when you hit a move, like a really good move, and it works, it puts fear into the other guy because he's like, he's going to do it again. He's going to do it again. He's going to, and then what that does is it takes him out of his offense. So now he's worried about just stopping me. He's not worried about scoring, which gives me the favor. You know, now I'm the favorite in this. So it kind of really worked in double favor for me. So it was a good thing. But the first match I was able to do really well. I had a really took on like the double L runner up, and I did really well that match. Had a lot of firemen's carries, scored a lot of points, and able to move on to the semifinals. And from there, hit another fireman, got the points up on the board, and I was able to ride out my next opponent. Uh, and then from there, in the finals, I wrestled the double L champion, who was like undefeated, really good wrestler. But the year before, I had some experience. I was a state open runner up. So I've been in the finals before. I knew what I had to do was score early and often and take the lead, put pressure on him to try to score because then he's going to open up and make mistakes. So I scored. I was able to get some points early on, and I was able to coast to a lead and become the first person in Derby wrestling to win the Open. You know, which was I was really happy, not only for myself, but I was really happy for Buster and Lee and Joe and Jeff Collins, for the guys in the program, because to be the first one to do it was great, but to do it for those guys and to see how happy they were and bring pride to the program and the recognition to the program was really nice. It was an extra caveat to the whole thing.
Yeah, definitely, Mark. And Mark, I mean, when you look back on your Derby career, I mean, so many great moments. Like I said, I sound like a broken record, but it's really true. I mean, winning the Albarella, which is a big honor as well. And I think about this, Mark. No matter how many years have went by, people still remember those years with such affection, with such great remembrance and things like that. And then to top it all off, in 2018, you get selected to the Derby Athletic Hall of Fame. And I know for you, Mark, that had to be something special because you mentioned many times that you and Chris Anderson would sit in his mother's car when you were young kids talking about that someday when you were like in second or third grade. So to have that happen for you, I mean, you have to look back on your Derby athletic career and just be so proud to have been a part of Derby athletics.
Definitely, yeah. We used to do that all the time. Hey, who would be in the Hall of Fame? We'd have a list, and we'd have a Derby Hall of Fame. Yeah, me and Chris did that all the time. We also used to do. It was kind of funny. We used to call up like the Seymour players, like really good players in the '80s. Call them up and talk to them on the phone. Kind of funny story. Hey, how you doing? No, we're just fans. We just want to talk to you. How you doing? Oh, hey, you played a great game, you know. And they would be like, "Who are these guys?" And we would call like someone like Jeff Rice. We'd call like Rob LaRose from Seymour. Just crazy stuff, just funny stuff that we would do. I don't know if they would remember that, but we would call just different people and really get into it because we would go to those games. We'd go to a Seymour game and watch Seymour for Cheshire, possibly, or something, whoever's playing home, you know. Yeah, we had a good time doing all that. It was and I tell you, I'm real happy that someone like yourself decided to have a Hall of Fame to do it because I think it deserves it. There's a lot of great athletes coming out of Derby over the years, over the 100 years, so or whatever years. And I think it needs to be recognized. There's a lot of great people too. You know, Someone like Mr. DeCenzo needs to be in a Hall of Fame. I mean, the guy, the man did a great job. Did a great job with me. Taught me a lot of good things. Same thing with Buster. You know, Buster did a heck of a job. Coaching me up. Someone needs to be recognized. He needs to be recognized for those things. And doing that, I think, really does it. Other people need to see that and recognize it and appreciate that. There's special people, and when you're special, people need to know how special they are. Because I'm sure they're still helping people. So I'm sure they're still coaching right now. I'm sure. Buster's still coaching right now, and I'm sure Mr. Senzo's helping some coach out somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, two great guys, as you mentioned. And
Yeah.
folks, we are going to have a part two eventually with Mark. We're going to talk about Mark Angeletti after Derby High. But Mark, for this segment, I just want to congratulate you and thank you for all the great memories that you provided myself and so many Derby fans over the years. I mean, I grew up watching your class more than probably any other class, and it was so special to watch. And everything you've done, not just in your athletic career, but in your life in general. I mean, being a teacher, being a coach, all that stuff. I really do applaud you, because one thing about you, Mark, is you just love to, be involved in any type of sports. You love to help people, and you've always done that. So I really do credit you for the work that you put in and the motivation and commitment you have to being the very best. And I thank you for giving me a few minutes today.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and hope to do part two soon enough. So,
well, thank you again. And folks, there you have it. As far as Derby High School goes for Mark Angeletti, I got to witness him early on in his career, probably 1986, I would say. And just watching him go out there and perform, it was so much fun to watch. But more than anything else about Mark Angeletti, he loved being a Derby Red Raider. He loved Derby. He loved putting on that uniform. He never stopped. He never forgot where he came from. Years later, he came back and he coached at Derby. His love for Derby, his passion for Derby, and Derby people and Derby fans in general is why he's one of the greatest Derby athletes that ever lived. He understood what it meant to have Derby tradition and what that tradition represented and what it really stood for. When you look back on great athletes, not just in Derby High, but in the state of Connecticut, Mark Angeletti's name will be right at the top. For Hometown Heroes, I'm Mike Kenichi saying good night, everyone.